Hi, I'm Blaine Hogue. I'm chair of the Moncton Heritage Conservation Board, and I'm here today in the beautiful Higgins building with Mario Casey. And we're going to find out why Mario and his company chose this building and moved in here. So Mario, please introduce yourself.
As you mentioned, my name is Mario Casey. I'm the president of MACC Commercial Properties, a real estate development company with buildings across the Greater Moncton area, as well as Nova Scotia and Ontario. And I guess the reason why we were interested in acquiring this building at the start, I was actually having a beer across the street with my buddy, and we kept looking at this building all boarded up, and one of the nicest buildings in Moncton, right at the entrance of Moncton. Nothing was being done, or so I felt. So I made some calls, found out who owned the building, and here we are.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now, the building, the Higgins Block, it's actually two buildings, isn't it? It was done in two stages, is that correct?
That's correct. The first part of the building, which is facing City Hall, was built in 1901. And after Mr. Higgins grew his business, he expanded and built the second part, which we're standing in right now, in 1909.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So Mario, I understand that originally Higgins' business was in the shoe business. Is that what you know?
That's correct. So that when he built the first building and even the second building, it was to manufacture and sell shoes, boots, that type of thing. And there was actually in the little room we're standing in here, or sitting, I guess, there was a skylight for the employees to have natural lighting when they worked. And I was actually able to find some checks and invoices online that I purchased, and I have framed and in my office.
Oh.
So a check and an invoice from I believe it was 1906.
Haven't tried to cash it, have you?
That one, it's actually been cashed already, but $1 and I think it was like $1.15 for some shoes wouldn't go very far.
And what happened after Mr. Higgins left? Because he went into the real estate business. We know that.
So when I think how the building actually got transferred or changed ownership is when he passed away, but I'm not 100% sure about that. And then there were a lot of different tenants, from Moncton Library to banks to clubs. Yeah. Mm-hmm. A lot of different tenants over the years, and the second and third floor were vacant, I believe, since the early or maybe mid 80s. Yeah. So when we opened up and put some windows in, the second and third floor hadn't seen light since the early to mid 80s.
So when you were looking at this and having a beer with your buddy and thinking about moving into this building, what made you decide that you would move into this building with whatever challenges there might have been, rather than build a new one?
Well, I think probably the first thing that enticed me to the building was its location. So there's not a lot of prime, I guess, land left in Moncton, especially on Main Street, and being right at the entrance of the city. I felt something needed to be done. To the building, and I was actually leasing my offices from a competitor. Oh. So I thought I needed my own space, and I just thought it was such a beautiful building. I could see the potential, even though it didn't look very good at the time, and there still needs to be a lot of work done on the building, but it just felt right.
And when did you buy the building and start to do the work on it?
I actually told the story last week, and I had to do some research. I first reached out to the former owner back in 2018, and it took us over a year to finally have an agreement. The former owner, a good fellow, actually we became friends, but he wasn't necessarily really looking to sell the building, but I sold him on my thoughts of what I wanted to do with the building, and he eventually agreed, and I think the closing was in 2019.
And then you started to do the work.
Yeah, it took about 6 months of design determining what we wanted to do. Obviously, with all the windows being boarded up, it was quite difficult to envision what we could do inside because there were some structural walls in place. So working with Architect 4, we came up with a multitude of plans, and finally we came on this one here, and then COVID struck, so that slowed the renovations quite a bit, but yeah.
Well, COVID must have been a challenge, but I imagine there were other challenges and obstacles when you started work.
Yeah, COVID was a challenge for sure, but when we had an idea structurally, the building wasn't as sound as it could have been, so we hired a company, I think out of Nova Scotia, called Giffen Engineering. We brought them in. They instantly found some structural deficiencies within the building. We had to put some steel beams, we had to put some footing and some concrete pillars in the basement going all the way to the third floor. So we, walking through the building, you could sense structurally there was some work that was needed. So did I underestimate the amount of work? Perhaps. There was also some environmental issues with the building being so old. There were some walls on the second and third floor that had some asbestos, so we had to get that remediated. I expected that as well. I mean, a building this old, when we started going through the walls, we found some horsehair for insulation. We pretty much knew what to expect, so we had to get a company that came in and they remediated the. When you actually see them come in with hazmat suits or whatever they have, once they started to clean and remediate the facility, we stayed out. But once it was done, so that was good. Probably the one part of the building that kind of caught me off guard a little bit was actually the exterior of the building. So the stone is sandstone. It did erode a little bit, but the mortar, you have to repoint it, and that was a little worse shape than I initially thought, even though that's part of the building I could actually see. I didn't have any expertise, nor did my partner in the sandstone or the mason or the mortar that was used. So that was probably our single biggest unknown challenge, I think, is what I would say.
Well, it's remarkable that the sandstone was even there after 120 Maritimes winters.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And I'm just wondering, for anybody else who might be considering repurposing a historic building, were there code issues that you had to deal with, like to do with, say, the staircase or any of those things?
Well, the building, when we purchased it, we gutted it, so...
Okay.
any code issues,
right.
They were gone once we gutted the entire building, and then you have to sprinkler the building. I think what was unfortunate, and that's one of the part that I didn't realize, so on the third floor, which I'm at, you actually see the open joists. The wood joists are over 100 years old, which is fascinating. On the second floor, because of fire code reasons, we actually had to drywall, and we had to hide the wood joists, which was personally devastating, but
sure.
I understand why. But besides that, in terms of codes, once the building was gutted, we did everything from plumbing, electrical, the heating, ventilation, everything's new, everything's up to code. So we redid the roof, we pretty much did everything, so no code issues.
So no regrets about choosing to do this over building a new one?
No, it's two different things. Like this one here, and it's probably my least profitable building. And by least profitable, we're not making money. But we eventually will. I mean, the building's maybe 2/3 full, and after the next tenant, then it flips over to hopefully start paying us back. So we can't wait for the next tenant to come in. But no regrets. You can't build new something like this with the charm, the character, the location. It's quite spectacular when you're in it. Yeah.
Did you have any trouble getting the first tenants who were in there? I know there's a bridal salon.
A little bit. It took some time. I mean, when you walk into a building that's completely empty and you have plywood as flooring and unpainted walls, people have a hard time visualizing So our first two tenants, which was Think Max and Bella Promessa, once they committed to our building, after that it was really easy to invest into the building and kind of finish it as you see today. It's been a lot of fun, and would I do it again? For sure. I mean, it's probably the funnest project I've ever done. I've done light industrial buildings, office buildings, apartment buildings, and there's nothing like working on a project like this.
So you would do it again?
I would do it again, yes.
That's what we're going to hear.
Yeah.
So Mario, what are the most interesting heritage elements you found in here that are still here and that surprised you maybe?
Having walked through the facility over a dozen times before we purchased it, nothing was surprising when we actually took ownership of it, but I think my favorite part is probably the walk-in safe that's on the second floor, which we actually left in the facility.
Yeah.
And Think Max, I mean, you folks should go take a look at what they've done in there. They've kept everything, and there was some old rusted shelving. They repainted it. It's absolutely fantastic what they've done in the old safe room. We did open the safe. We don't know when was the last time it was open, so I was hoping that there were gold bars and loads of cash in there. Unfortunately, there was nothing. But
not even old shoes?
There was only old shelves, and that was basically it. But that was by far the most fascinating part of the facility. I mean, outside, which people can see, it is quite fascinating. There's actually a carving of Mr. Higgins' face on one of the stones outside, and there are some details that luckily haven't eroded to the fact that you can't see them anymore. But actually every office or every space that's in the facility or in our building, you will get a brick inside, and it's still the original mortar, still the original brick, so it's
which is like we can see behind
yes.
us here.
This one here is a little. This one here is a little newer.
Yeah.
But in my office, it's a little older. But it's quite fascinating to think that it was put up over 100 years ago and still looks relatively nice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mario, thank you so much for sharing all of that and sharing what you have done here, and you've done Moncton proud. We're so happy that you have done this for Moncton. And, I heard you say earlier that you're still looking for tenants. I can't imagine any tenant who wouldn't want to be in this building. It is so superb as we look out on Main Street, as you mentioned. The location is great. The building is wonderful. What you've done with it is wonderful. So I think people should be trying to kick down your doors to get in here.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. And we're definitely hoping. We still have about 5 empty spaces on the second and third floor, so can't wait for those to be leased up.
And so you've got the marketing company in here. I think
they're actually an IT company.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, IT company, the bridal company.
That's correct.
And who else?
We have on the third floor we have a company called Into Design.
Mm-hmm.
So they're a specialized office design company.
Oh.
And then our corporate office is here as well.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and on the main floor we have 3 restaurants.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes.
Well, thank you again.
You're welcome. Thanks.